That's So Raven, a classic early 2000s children's show. And for me, and likely for many other children from my generation, it was a formative part of my childhood. For some reason, as a child, the thought of being psychic and having these like mystical, magical powers just really spoke to me, and the outfits were just always so good. I just wanted to be like Raven and Chelsea so bad. And part of its importance, too, as we all know, is that Disney is not known for its diverse representation, so it probably does not come as a surprise that before That's So Raven started airing in 2003, there were no shows on Disney that featured a black main character, particularly a black girl. And if you aren't familiar with the show, it features Raven, a teenage girl who has psychic visions of the future that often cause her to end up in wacky situations with her friends and family. And what makes this show so significant as a topic of study is the intersectional representations of race and gender that it puts forth, which are often problematic. And as is discussed by Stuart Hall in his 1981 piece on racist ideologies in media, institutions like media are particularly central to the matter since they are, by definition, part of the dominant means of ideological production. And I used to love this show as a kid, but now that I have recently started rewatching a little bit of the show after having redeveloped more of a critical media lens, I have started to notice some of the potentially very problematic portrayals that I just didn't notice when I was younger. And first, I want to talk about the problematic portrayals of gender in the show, and then we'll get into some of the problematic portrayals of race. Stuart Hall, who I mentioned a second ago, also wrote a lot about how the media contributes to creation of different forms of social consciousness, which leads us to make descriptive statements that seem to be a fact of the world or a fact of nature rather than what they really are, which are sentiments rife with underlying ideological premises constructed by hegemonic social forces. And an example of a statement like this that the show puts forth and really plays into is girls like fashion, shopping, and boys like being tough and sports and girls. And so I just wanted to play a few clips that kind of show this.
He didn't even look at you. Eddie, what does a girl have to do to get a guy to notice her?
What is under my nail?
My love for shoes. By Raven Baxter. So many shoes, but only 2 feet. I wish I could buy every pair that I meet.
Introducing the newest member of Bayside's basketball team, starting guard Eddie Nothing But Net Thomas. 3 seconds. Thomas charges down the floor, makes his move, drives to the rim. Yes! Yes! Thomas wins the championship, and the crowd goes wild.
Congratulations, Eddie! You made the team! I'm so happy for you!
Thank you. And now the crowd can stop hugging. Did you have a vision? Did it have anything to do with me dating a cheerleader? And another cheerleader?
Raven Baxter's modeling this year's newest fall fashion, her new line of boas. Yes, it's what every girl should have around her neck this year. And guys, with the holiday seasons coming up, what better way to say I love you than a new boa? Okay, available in spots and solids, up to 25 feet long. My not included. Thank you so much. They're laughing out there. Reptile Rick doesn't model snakes. He wrestles them.
So, as you can see, gender norms are very strongly reinforced and not really challenged at all. It's very, very clear that the girls are very girly and the boys are very boyish, and that is just the way that things are in this show. So if you're looking for a show that challenges gender norms, this is definitely not the one for you. The way that gender is presented in this show also kind of reminds me of The Real Housewives in the paper that Leanne Moskowitz wrote about it in 2013. In our discussion about whether The Real Housewives could be argued to be a feminist critique through irony, Eddie Umstead said of the arguably post-feminist media text, "The criticism of the characters relies on their failure to perform the patriarchal enforcement of stereotypes and femininity." And this general idea is often the case in That's So Raven too. That is the punchline being a violation of gender norms. In season 1, episode 1, the joke is that Raven is in a fat suit, and I guess it's supposed to be funny because she's like failing at the feminine expectation of being small and petite and slim. So this is funny to us. And she also has like big teeth in her mouth, which is supposed to be funny too. And in another episode, Ye Old Dating Game, also in season 1, she wears this hag costume to the dance, trying to get a boy to not be attracted to her. And this is also supposed to be some kind of punchline, I guess, because she's not living up to the feminine expectation of being pretty and conventionally attractive. Now I want to talk about the portrayals of race in That's So Raven, and before we start discussing this, I think it's really important to mention that both of the creators, Susan Sherman and Michael Porteous, were white. So this is a black character and a black family, written by white people. And also, this one is pretty blatant, but the show definitely evokes the sort of like magical, mystical black character that comes to the aid of the white characters trope that Spike Lee has notoriously talked about, citing such films as The Family Man, What Dreams May Come, The Legend of Bagger Vance, and The Green Mile. And this show also perpetuates the stereotype that black people are not interested in health or being environmentally conscious or just being outside. And here are some examples of that.
The reason I didn't tell you about the outdoor club is because, I just know you're not really into nature. Nature? Yeah. Isn't that place with the dirt and the trees? Get off my turkey! Look at you two! Fighting over a meat ruler. We should go outside, We should get some fresh air, exercise. That's too far.
We can also see a little bit of the black female respectability politics that Ralina Joseph mentioned in her 2018 book about post-racial resistance, given that, one, Raven and her family are portrayed as very well off, given that they live in San Francisco, one of the cities with the highest cost of living in the entire United States, and two, Raven's parents emphasize a lot the need for her to behave well and get good grades. And this kind of brings us to another point discussed by Joseph, which is the idea of strategic ambiguity. And we see this in a lot of shows, particularly circa early 2000s, in which we see black characters that have no difference in experience or identity because of their blackness, which allows directors and casters to include black actors in the cast without like having to be explicitly political, like actually protesting in any radical or highly meaningful way. And in our October 22nd class discussion about how the concept of strategic ambiguity functions as both a tool for empowerment and a means of obfuscation in the context of Shonda Rhimes and her television productions, in the discussion board, Tran said that strategic ambiguity played a crucial role in Rhimes' success as a creator and showrunner in a white-dominated industry. So, in times when the political climate is hostile to explicit forms of racial resistance, strategic ambiguity, while being a form of post-racial resistance, which sort of blames the victims of racism rather than the institutions that created racism, it can be a worthwhile strategy when there is not anything else really available. And thinking back to our class discussion that we had in class in week 9 about media we grew up with that had Arab or Muslim characters, I think it's also important to mention that even though the main character is Black, and there is that much representation, there are no Asian, Middle Eastern, or Hispanic characters in the show. And additionally, thinking back to our discussion about Gentleman Jack and that article and what it says about the relationship between nationality, class, and marginalized communities, it could be argued that Raven's character as a Black woman is tempered by the respectability politics employed in the show and the fact that she is an upper echelon American. Overall, I won't say that the show was like promoting incredibly bigoted ideas or that it's just a super sexist and misogynistic show, but I also wouldn't recommend it to parents to show their children. Like, I won't be saying that it's gonna make their children super politically conscious, because it won't. It's pretty strongly adheres to hegemonic ideals about gender and race and doesn't really challenge either of them in a meaningful way. So, you know, do with that what you will, but yeah, my perspective on the show has definitely changed after looking back on it now. But yeah, that's my analysis of That's So Raven. Thank you for listening.